Hello, hello. Welcome back to Active Breath, the MVM Miller Voice Method podcast. My name is Kyle Cameron. I'm one of your hosts. I'm here with a couple of excellent people. One of them is my co-host. Say hello, Scott.
Hello, Scott.
Scott Miller, founder and CEO of the whole organization. And we are thrilled to be joined today by Kristi Dana. Kristi Dana is an associate professor of voice and speech in the Division of Theater at Southern Methodist University. She is the director of the MVM teacher certification program and a certified Miller Voice Method teacher herself. She also is a certified Knight Thompson speech work teacher. She is wildly qualified. She's on the faculty of the Michael Chekhov Association. And perhaps most importantly of all, she is a loving dog mom. Ladies and gentlemen, and all other folks. Kristi Dana, say hello.
Hey, hello.
How is your dog, by the way?
She's good. She's taking a little nap and she knows that I'm on some sort of call, so she's relaxed.
So we're so happy to have you, Kristi. We will start out with our little check-ins, 1 minute each, give or take. Usually we run timers on this so that everyone gets exactly the same amount of time, but we like to float a little bit more on the podcast. So who would like to kick things off with wherever you're coming from today?
Well, I'll start.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Jump on in.
Well, I said before we started this that I felt nervous, and Kyle said, don't be nervous. And Scott said, no, be nervous. So now I don't know really what to be at all, but I'm here and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that you all have started this podcast. It's just sort of speaks to all the sort of constant evolution that I've seen in this work over the past 10 years or so. But my check-in is, I taught today and I was doing 25-minute, more like 28 and a half, giving myself no break between tutorials with my sophomores. And they're blowing my mind. They're really insane. I don't think I was that smart. I certainly was not that talented, intuitive, available, all the things that they are. But we had really, really excellent sessions. And they're basically what we're doing is this kind of experiment that we've been doing for several years now, where they get assigned scenes in their acting class. And in the acting class, the acting teacher is taking them through their sort of his own progression of work with the acting. Mm-hmm. And then I have them do the text transfusion, Miller Voice Method's text transfusion on the scenes. And we spend a good bit of time for a while in the class just working through the initiating impulses and getting a sense of how their inner life is affecting, literally what comes out of their face and their point of view and the mm-hmm. clarity of their action in their lines of text. And they've kind of gone in from each round and refined. And some of the things that they were coming in today were sort of blowing my mind. And yeah, so that's kind of like, that was very inspiring and kind of a sort of amazing work to do before coming and joining you all.
Yeah, we'll want to hear a little more about that. It's nice to get a little cliff notes of the work up front and how it's playing out in real time. I'm happy to go next. Not a whole lot to report. I've had a pretty quiet week. I had a sort of eye infection earlier this week. Not to get too gruesome within the first 4 minutes of the podcast. But I've had, has anyone ever had a sty before?
Yeah. I used to get them all the time.
I think of them as being like, unpleasant, but pretty discreet, which is to say like small and self-contained. And I think maybe this one was like under the eyelid or something. Anyway, it sort of blew up and got very swollen. And so I was like freaking out. 'Cause like, I think most of us, when there is some sort of, affliction on our face, it feels personal. And maybe more so when you're an actor and it's like, oh, I mean, if I lose my eye, or I, have a giant swelling on my face forever, which of course is how it feels in the moment of that happening, then it's like, what's going to happen to my career? What's going to happen to my, my illustrious film and television career, such as it is. So it's just sort of fascinating to watch that hypochondria flare up and the panic start to set in. And of course, a hot compress or two and a little bit of steroid cream, and within a couple of days, it's almost gone. But yeah, funny to just, my partner is very supportive and reassuring and knows this about me, that I will freak out around any sort of illness thing. And so he was leaving for work on that first day, and he was like, please remember to tell yourself that you're a good person.
Did that help?
Yes.
No.
Because telling myself that I'm a good person isn't going to make me feel better necessarily, but being seen by someone who knows that you're going to spiral into this oh my God, what's wrong with me? When it's like, no, we know what's wrong with you. You just came home from the doctor. They told you what's wrong with you. They told you how to fix it. It's fine. Let's just wait it out. So I've been just trying to patiently wait it out. How about you, Scott?
Today I'm feeling a little lethargic, and I just came back from a week in England, in a town called Leicester, England, which is about an hour, I don't know, is it north, south? It's about an hour train ride outside of London for a global empathy in healthcare conference. This was a smaller conference. I had gone to a bigger conference in September, but they had a smaller one. It was only 35 of us, and you had to kind of apply and be invited because it was specifically for people who were teaching or coaching in the healthcare industry on empathy. And I don't know if I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but
you've mentioned it a little bit, but
yeah,
we'll need to get more into detail.
Yeah, I thought that empathy, the lack of empathy in the healthcare industry between doctors and patients, sometimes, medical professionals between medical professionals, was kind of an American thing. But apparently it's a bit of a global problem in many, many different countries around the world. These global empathy centers connected with medical schools are opening up in a lot of different countries. And there's a lot of factors for it, but anyway, we were invited in this conference to share our approaches, and everybody else in the conference is coming from a point of view of the healthcare industry. They're connected with the healthcare industry. They're trainers in the healthcare industry. They're doctors, nurses, executives, etc. I was the only one there that was from outside the healthcare industry, and because of that, because this work comes from a completely different angle, a very embodied angle, it went really well. They were really kind of blown away by the work and appreciative of it, and got invited back to be a speaker and share more of the work because it was a little condensed, the time that we had. So it was very exciting to, as the mission is to get this work into any and every part of the world that wants it, actor or non-actor related. It was a big step forward there. So I'm looking forward to going back, etc. But I hadn't, I had left the next day after the conference, and usually I like to give myself, if I can afford it, at least one day in the space, in the city that I am doing the work in, to relax a little bit and then come back. But I didn't have that chance this time. Or rather, I didn't take that chance. I'm sure I had that chance, but I didn't take that chance this time. So, yeah.
Nice.
So I'm a little too lethargic to be nervous, Kristi.
Well, that's good. That's at least I know one of us is not nervous.
Yes.
You're not nervous anymore, are you?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm starting to relax.
Yeah, there we go.
Hey,
That's
can we have a very brief discussion? Can I steal some time, Kyle?
Of course.
Thank you. I feel like I'm in the Senate. Can I a very brief discussion on what the word nervous even means,
Ooh.
and the nervous system? What do
Yeah.
we use that word a lot, but it, I would imagine it's different for every one of us to some degree.
Yeah.
So when you say nervous, Kristi, what do you mean?
I think it usually manifests as two things. One, physical, which is a slight tightness in my chest. And then psychological, like I'm just ahead of what's actually happening. I'm thinking about what we're going to talk about. I'm worrying if my points are going to be okay. Did I prep properly? Instead of, being just right here with you. And so my nerves started to subside when, we have the active breath and that's a beautiful thing. And so I was able to, over the last few minutes, listening to your all's check-in, slow down my breath, close my eyes, listen to the actual words that you are saying, knowing that it's going to all unfold the way that it's going to unfold. So it's a little bit of like then I made physical and psychological adjustments to arrange for the nervousness I was feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I was just going to say, I relate to that feeling of tightness in the chest. That feels very present for me. That feels very specific, and I feel like that then affects my breath. Yeah. And so, I have had very similar experiences of, actively trying to come back to the active breath as a tool to kind of untangle that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I find myself curious about it because it's something I've been investigating for a little bit of time now. This idea of regulating and dysregulation, and the kind of dysregulation we want to be in as an actor in a kind of regulated way, right? Because if we're too dysregulated, the audience can start to worry about our personal safety and maybe, even their own personal safety. But once it's kind of dysregulation is happening through kind of a regulated body, there's more of an opportunity for information transportation safely, I mean, if you think about it, so many things that we act, if we saw on the street, we would completely shut down. There wouldn't be any kind of like, oh yes, let me open to this experience that I'm witnessing right in front of me, So it's an interesting like magic trick to be in occupation of these actions in front of other humans and have the humans stay open to it. And of course, a lot of the work that we do focuses on that. But in the case of nervousness, and the other aspect I'm looking at with this nervousness thing is in relationship to kind of time dimensions, like the past, present, and future. And because I can really relate to what you all are saying about the tightness, and also Kristi about the kind of getting ahead of yourself, that kind of projecting into the future, and how much of that is based on that sense of obsessing into the past, right? Of the worry and the anxiety of all the triggers that are informing the expectation of the future and what it could look like and what it's going to look like, and all the while trying to kind of stay present. I find that's mostly happening when I'm listening. But once I get, like right now, I'm involved in speaking about something, I may start out a little shaky, and I can feel it in my voice. It might get a little quivery, and I can feel like my body's shaking a little bit. But pretty quickly, it starts to calm down once I'm in the occupation of moment-to-moment present activity. But those moments before, when all of those kind of like realms of tenses start to happen, is really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gets
I've
such
never
a...
been a person who's really...
Sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
I was just going to say, I've never really struggled with stage fright, but I can relate to that feeling always on an opening, especially. But then, once the scene starts, by and large, until something goes horribly wrong, my brain can become occupied in, like you said, the present information, and a lot of that anxious feeling slips away.
Yeah. And nervousness gets such a bad rap. And to your point in the beginning, before we even got on the call, Scott, and saying, no, be nervous because that's energy. And, we will, you hear all the time, well, you being people who are trained in the theater, I feel like we often hear like, oh, use it. And it's like, yeah, but I think we're talking about the how. We're certainly talking about the how in our work. Like, Scott, I just jotted down what you said because I just want to say it to all my students now. Dysregulation through a regulated body. I mean, that's brilliant. Like, how do we actually allow ourselves to be in enough chaos to be in the moment, but know that we are actually still in charge of our experience? My grad school professor, Judy Levivier, who is a certified Miller voice teacher amongst us, she studied with Chuck Jones, who was a big voice practitioner for quite some time. And he would talk about the difference between being in control and being in charge. And he would talk about, right, like you can relinquish control and still be in charge of your experience. And
ooh, I love that.
Yeah, and I just have held on to that forever because I think it's so important for, well, not just acting, but for presentations and for intense interviews and for, an intense conversation with your friend that you don't want to have or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle.
My pleasure, Scott. So, Kristi, you are a voice practitioner and have been for several many years in various capacities as a teacher, as a performer. And you've been a student of the voice, obviously, for quite some time as well. We're always curious on this podcast, what do you think that study of the voice has offered you in your, in your personal life, in your professional life?
Yeah. So a quick anecdote to say, when I was an undergrad, it was a BA program and voice was an elective. And so I was... Wow. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, that seems optional,
Just the thing that you primarily use to send every bit of information as an actor, choose whether to do that or not. So, yeah, and so, of course, like, there I am as basically a kid going, oh, well, my voice is great. Like, I don't need voice class. Like, I have a lot of credits I need to fill, so I'll go take this class and this class and that. So, I just didn't get exposure to that in undergrad. And I had no clue that I needed it. And then I went, eventually to New York City, was trying to be an actor. And I took this acting class, and the acting teacher was like, Kristi, you need a voice class. And I was like, all right. So I was like, whatever.
I love the hubris.
So I went to this class, but I wasn't ready to receive it. I wasn't ready to receive it. And it was a Linklater class. And I'm certain that the progression that she was teaching me was very important for me. I'm certain of it. But I just was like, I don't really get it. What am I doing? And I'm like, 22 years old, flitting around, whatever. Then, I kind of go through more and more of my life. I don't end up going back to grad school until my early 30s. And then I still didn't know. I just knew that I was not that great of an actor. And then I wanted to be a better actor. And I also knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And I knew that I wanted to teach in higher education. So I said, okay, like this makes sense to go do an MFA program. And so when I was asked, why are you going back to grad school? I didn't even know to say, because I need voice training. Like that wouldn't have even dawned on me because I didn't know what it was. And then I got into class and it was like a release valve was turned. And I was like, oh, just did not even have a clue what was going on with my body and the tension that had been filling my body for I don't know, I guess I was 31 or something, 33, whatever, all that time. And I didn't have a sense of anything. I didn't know that my tongue root was pulled back. I didn't know that my jaw was tight. I didn't know that I was holding my breath all the time. And I didn't know that all of those things were adding up to notes like, you're not listening, you're in your head, you're controlling the scene, stop driving the truck, as my acting teacher used to say. And so it was like, oh, it was like a revelation. And then it kind of became a revelation for my life, because as I was applying those skills, then suddenly I was being listened to more, and I was standing my ground more, and I was listening more and receiving more in scenes and things that I didn't even know were possible. And so it really kind of changed me. And then I'll just kind of cap this off by saying that was even before I was exposed to Miller voice method. So that was Judy Lee teaching me Chuck Jones' work, a little bit of Linklater, a little bit of Patsy Rodenberg, a little bit of Roy Hart. Like, she would pull from a lot of different sources. And of course, a little bit of Judy Lee, because, and I was inspired by her. And then when I found Scott and found Miller voice method and found the active breath, it was like, that was really then like the key could turn, or like the valve could turn all the way, kind of. To go back to my metaphor. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to not only change those things, acting and my life, but also change my teaching and my approach to teaching. And so it's been the key component for me over anything else. Like, I love training in all different types of acting methodologies and movement work and all those things, but the voice work has really been the absolute key for me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it can be a mysterious thing to explain to non acting school having gone to people what voice class is. It's like, I often joke that I have a terminal degree in being able to breathe into my back. Cause it's like that, that feels like a concrete, real thing kind of to me, but it's like a flippant thing to say to someone who doesn't have any idea what that means. But that, like, I feel like that's born out of, there is something very mysterious. There can be something very mysterious about the study of voice, because I agree that it, like you said, it's this key down into the body, into the viscera, into like an embodied experience of a scene in a way that can be very hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. You said something, Kristi, about the feeling of, I don't really get this. I don't really know what we're doing here. And I think that, like, I have had that experience in voice class as well sometimes, of like, how is this sort of supposed to help me? And you sort of never know what the key is going to be for that sort of drop in. And I think one of the things that's so exciting about MVM is we value specificity and transparency and clarity so much that it seems like it's in the DNA of this work to be like, well, this is what we're doing. Do this really specific thing. Yeah. Pay attention to these specific parameters, and then we'll talk about how it affects the overall whole experience of the, like, whether it's scene study or acting.
100%.
I think that's such a wonderful component.
Yeah, because think about how many notes that you receive as an actor that are just so intangible. And, it's like, and you need to receive those notes sometimes and interpret them, of course, in your own way. But to have someone say, trust yourself. And then, and then us to, and then us to go, well, okay, what are the ways when you felt that you were trusting yourself? What are the literal physical shifts that, and breath shifts and vocal shifts that you made that allowed you to feel you were trusting yourself more? Okay, let's try to repeat that. And it's the biggest piece of feedback my students give to me, honestly, is that they're just so thankful for tangible tools for intangible notes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just working with a private client, and we were talking about I'm sure none of us can relate to what I'm about to say.
Uh-oh.
Which is, you get that script, and in that action line, it says, and you start to break down and sob.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And, and just reverse engineering all of that and bringing up the point that by and large, humans don't try to feel anything. If anything, feeling becomes an obstacle to what you're trying to get done. So, and, in the work we talk about feeling as just actually, a further vibration of doing. When doing gets to a place where it reaches a certain energy level, it creates a vibration that the rest of the world calls feeling. But, we were talking about how, I was just wondering how chefs, right, think of making dishes. Do they just think about that finished dish and see that finished dish, and right? Because as actors, we see that action line, and all we can think about is, I have to cry, I have to cry, I have to cry. And I wonder if cooks and chefs feel the same way. I have to make that dish, I have to make that dish, or they're just concentrating on putting the paprika on, moving the pan around in the oil, and just being in flow state, task to task. Knowing that eventually a dish will happen, and also not knowing exactly what that dish is going to look like, more or less, sure, but not exactly. And if we could take a hint from that a little bit and really just get back into the doing of those, whatever the character is doing in that moment, and more times than not seeing feeling as the obstacle to doing, certainly not the desired state, and really leaning into the doing. But it was interesting. We started talking about occupation of attention also, right? In the sense that canary in the cave, when you're starting to become self-conscious, it just means that there's not enough information for your attention to be occupied with, besides yourself. And then you become self-conscious, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's that kind of building block work that not only builds the thing, like any construction eventually. I mean, I love going by sites of construction sites, because it's still in New York, it still amazes me how, they first start digging the hole, and it's like how does that become that building, It's just incredible. But every day, some people show up and they just do their tasks, et cetera. So can we do that as actors? Can we do that as people? Can we just show up and do our tasks as parents, right? As friends, with ourselves, in our health? It just kind of goes on. Because, we're all going to die. Death is awaiting. Our final dish is awaiting us, no matter what.
Yeah.
But,
a series of attempts and then you die.
That's right.
Trademark.
Trademark.
We'll get the t-shirts out eventually. Don't worry. Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah. So Kristi, I'm curious about, all of this sort of foundational voice work being a space for you to open up and discover new things about your work and understand notes in a new way. And then eventually we get to you encountering Scott and MVM. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the circumstances under which you encountered this work, and how it affected that progress that that journey that you were already on.
Yeah, sure. So basically, like many grad students do, I got out of grad school and panicked. And
Sure.
and I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I called Judy Lee and I said, I think I want to get a certification. And I did eventually end up doing Michael Chekhov work. I always kind of knew that I wanted to do that. I just, so I said, maybe I'll do Michael Chekhov work and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but also I love voice, and what should I do? And Judy Lee was like, well, have you joined VASTA, the Voice and Speech Trainers Association? I said, no. And she said, well, why don't you join? She said, maybe you can come with me to the conference this summer. And, you know, I'd like to have a mentor is to have, you know, an angel, basically.
Sure.
You know, so I was like, okay. You know, so I quickly signed up and went with her to the conference. And it just happened to be that John Patrick, who's, as we all know, one of the founders of the Miller Voice Method Studio, he was there presenting. And Judy Lee and I went to his workshop. And actually, he was doing a warm-up and a workshop. And for some reason, we couldn't go to the workshop. Maybe we were presenting our paper or something at the same time. But we went to his warm-up. And even in the warm-up, both of us were like, wait, what is this? What's happening? Like, what are we doing? And why do we love it? And what's happening?
She was new to it too?
Yeah. Yeah, she had, I think she had heard of it and she had heard of Scott, but we both were totally new to it. And we connected with JP and JP was like, well, I should connect you with Scott. And so I was living in New York City at the time. And so I contacted Scott and Scott was kind enough to come meet me at a place that I don't even know if it exists anymore, a place called Argo Tea. And we met at Argo Tea in like 2013. And I said, I don't know, like that warm up was amazing. And what is it? And how do I learn this work? And Scott said, well, you know, I do sometimes have, this was way before we had a formal teacher cert program. So Scott said, well, I do have, you know, sometimes people come and shadow me at NYU and sometimes also at the Michael Chekhov studio where he was teaching the voice component. But, you know, you have to study the work first. You can't just come and shadow me and assist me without studying it. And I said, okay, well, how do I study? And he said, well, I don't have any formal classes going on right now. And I said, okay, well, can I make a formal class? You know, it's like, you know, if you haven't guessed, I'm a Capricorn, right? So it's like, you know, ambition. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I have people who want to go. I know I have people who want to go. So I put together a weekend workshop that we held it in, I think it was January 2014. And then, you know, I said to Judy Lee, can you get us a space? And she said yes. And so we did this weekend workshop. And Liam Joint, who's one of the other co-founders of Miller Voice Method Studio, he came in and assisted Scott. And Katie Honaker, who's on Miller Voice Teacher Cert faculty and as a certified teacher, she came and assisted Scott as well. And we did this weekend workshop, which now upon reflection, Scott, like we were doing insanely advanced work. But we didn't know any better. Like you put together this like smorgasbord of like of the work to sort of like have us dip our toe into both like foundations and fundamentals and also into like practical application. And so we were doing everything from like get on the floor and embody active breath in what's called our Walvey exercise to like, okay, now get on your feet and I gave you this scene a while ago. Try to do this scene and breathe at the same time, which seemingly simple, right? But, oh, by the way, Katie's going to come over and put her hands on your rib cage and make sure you keep breathing. I mean, come on. You know, it was so difficult. And yet it was just like, it was just absolutely, I was enraptured by it because it was already, even in that weekend, sort of shifting my approach to acting. And I was, last little anecdote, I guess, is like, we even did independent activity. So we had to choose an activity to do. And we did basically what we call in the CERT program, breathe, speak, do. Sounds just like what it is. So I think I was folding clothing and folding towels or something. And you have to, you know, fold the towels and actively breathe. So continuous breathing. Somebody's hands are usually on your body at the same time. And you have to speak your lines of text. Insanely difficult. But I found at one point, I remember a bit of flow state. And I started weeping. And I said, and I was like, and Scott's like, you know, talk about what's going on. And I said, well, I think I said something like, I just don't understand. Like I've had all this in me and I've never like been able to release this before or something like that. And I will never forget, Scott, till the day I freaking die, that you looked at me and you said, but weren't you perfect every other time you did it before now? And I looked at you and I was like, what? And that one thing started teaching me that there was both a what and a how. Like there is the what of the work, and then there is a how. There is a philosophy around how we approach thinking about knowledge, and how we gain knowledge, and when we gain knowledge, and that you can only know the thing you know when you know it. You couldn't have done it any other way in the past, because you literally didn't have the knowledge. You literally didn't have. So of course it was perfect. But to me, that exploded my brain into 1,000 pieces. and then I was like, how do I teach this work? And then we kind of went from there, and we can talk about more of the evolution later. But that was a snippet of my introduction.
Wow. Yeah, I remember going advanced with you all because, the student will always teach the teacher how to teach if they're paying attention to the student, and that, as I remember, that group was pretty, I mean, you just named all your voice training beforehand. Like you weren't lacking voice training or knowledge. And so the thing to focus on with that group was pretty advanced. And so the thing to focus on was the integration, part of the work. How do you do it under duress? Even if the duress is simply trying to do all those three things at the same time with people watching you, with someone's hands on you, monitoring you. It's funny. I never thought of it until you just said that, Kristi. But hands on is kind of like, it occurs to me that hands on is kind of like the camera. Like, why do people turn into these weird people once the camera's on it? And I don't mean just actors. Like, if someone's going to take a picture of you, like this invisible force comes over you all of a sudden, and you turn into this alien being. Certainly internally, if not externally. So it's that level of awareness and a level of other being aware of me. And it strikes me as just very animal, just very in the jungle animal. And you need to be aware of the other animals if you're going to survive, and so there's nothing wrong with being self-conscious and having that sense of consciousness, but it has to be practiced in the practice, as opposed to just wait for it in the performance.
Yeah.
If it's not going to steal your focus.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about hands-on, what that means and what that's for? I don't think we've actually addressed that on this podcast.
That's a good point. Kristi, you want to give it a shot?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's always an option for any one of our students, whether they would even want to have their coach's hands-on. But the hands-on is basically used as like a feedback. Almost one of my students called it haptic feedback, which I thought was a really great way to describe it. It's basically used as like a feedback mechanism. So if I were to place my hands on your back ribs to see if you could maintain continuous breathing, then my hands are sort of like magnets. They're not squeezing you, but they're magnetized to you so that you have a tiny bit of pressure to work against, and you have that feedback. And then if you hold or grab or constrict, I can do just a tiny, tiny little squeeze or a tiny little jostle or something to remind you, hey, you're holding. And that feedback mechanism is kind of brilliant, because then you can start to put your attention on other things, like actually speaking your words with some sort of meaning, and trying to actually get something from your scene partner and communicate an action or a point of view, while you're continuing to get that consistent feedback that you could put your own hands on. And yes, often we do, but there is something about that outside feedback mechanism. And the hands-on work and in our work is very specific. So it's really looking at hands-on in relationship to the three parts of the body that we look at as places that we can feel movement when we breathe. So the abdominals, the rib cage, the pectoralis. And basically that's where we're getting that feedback from.
Anything you want to add to that, Scott?
You know what happened? So for podcasting, we listen to each other's talking through the phone, right? And then and my daughter called at the same time on the phone, and I hit a button thinking I was pushing her to voicemail, and I actually hung up, and I didn't hear anything Kristi said.
Oh, well.
So I might
I'm
have
here
something
to tell you
add.
it was great. It was very thorough. It was very specific.
Very brilliant.
But what I mean, let me, if this is redundant, let me know, obviously. But what I'm also curious about, Kristi, is like moving through COVID, moving through the Me Too movement, moving through Black Lives Matters, moving through the increased agency of identity in the classroom. Mm-hmm. You know, the last, I would say, you know, like, and maybe I'm getting my years off, but like 2015 through 24, 25, and how that all those awarenesses, personal awarenesses, related to many things in the classroom. We could have 5 episodes on that probably.
Yeah, sure.
But also related to another person putting their hands on you.
Yeah.
And also teachers in the room feeling all of a sudden, well, I don't want to do that, or doing that in a room alone with a student in a tutorial. Like I have colleagues that will never do that again. Yeah. Will never be alone with a student in a room, and do any hands-on work. Like if you're an Alexander teacher, you can't get away with it because that is your job, right? Through the hands predominantly. So, anyway, yeah. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there were all those sort of movements that you're talking about, and at the same time, intimacy coordination was really being built for the first time ever, right? Mm-hmm. So it really, like, that kind of was like hand in hand with, okay, how are we going to address people's boundaries, and how are we going to provide options? So I think, you know, yes, it can be tricky. And I guess I am proud to say that we have developed like a very specific protocol as to how our teachers can, and our teachers do not have to ever place hands, to your point. If they don't want to, then the entirety of the work can be taught without hands-on and be taught brilliantly. But certainly if that's something they want to do, then, you know, in our certification program, we have an entire sort of chapter that gets addressed in our in-person component that talks about all the ins and outs of how we do that work. And it's important because sometimes in our classes, we have the actual teacher, you know, with the possibility of hands-on a student. And sometimes we do student-student pairings. And one student is like the coach and the other student is the actor. And so those, we have a whole dialogue now, and it's very efficient and non-emotional that we've developed so that the students with each other can have that quick conversation and determine if hands-on is something they want to do. And what's great is that because all of this stuff sort of evolved at the same time, this is not daunting to them anymore. Like there was this period of wonkiness for a while, and now the students are like, they know how to do I have never seen my students be more efficient than when they do their intimacy check-ins with each other. It's so fast. They talk about their general boundaries and ding, 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 and it's like, boom, and they're ready to work. And so when I put them in pairs and we, you know, practice these little conversations, it's so quick and efficient and easy. But I think we did have to obviously evolve with the times, you know, as we do across the board in our work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's wonderful to go into class now and have like 4 different versions that you can offer an experience without it feeling like you're diluting their experience. Because that usually is the number one concern with any kind of adaptation you make to kind of a foundation or a principle exercise. And a lot of times the students won't voice the fact that there is something in their body that's a little off, on their mind, it's, you know, whatever the case may be, because they feel like, well, any adjustment you give me is gonna dilute the effectiveness of the work. So let me just not say anything. And to really get that message across from the get-go, from day one in the class, to that no. Your job is to report. My job is to figure out how to get you the same quality of informational experience as if we did it another way, right? And that's what we do in our research, and that's what we try to figure out. And but without that kind of buy-in from the student to be transparent, appropriately transparent in whatever fashion they feel is appropriate to deliver that information, so they can get on and receive the why, even if the how is a little different, but they can certainly get the same. In fact, I think we may have another teacher on later, another episode who does this. Josh JDR reminded me of this. He's like, oh yeah, in classes, what I do now is we I encourage them, regardless of how they're feeling, if they want hands-on, don't want hands-on, encourage them to do all 4 of the different options on different days, just to get different experiences, and also practice saying no to me.
Yeah.
Like, even if you do want my hands on, like, let's go through the practice every so often. Just surprise me, say, no, I don't want your hands on me.
Yeah.
Just
a complete sentence.
Yeah. Just so you can get that experience of what that feels like.
Yeah. Because if you give them enough agency, it's brilliant. I mean, I just talked about the thirds, but the other day I was having a student who, generally tends to push from her neck, and kind of collapse in the chest. And so I said to her, can I place my hands on your shoulders? I put my hands on my own shoulders. I said it would look like this. And she said, yes. And then I said, can I put my hands on the back of your neck? And she said, no. And I said, great. I said, can you put your hand on the back of your neck like this? And she said, yep. And it was as easy as that, And then we were able to still accomplish what we wanted to accomplish in that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And we really encourage people not to get into storytelling. I don't want hands-on today because I'm feeling a little bit of this, but I'm so sorry, but not any of, just kind of keep it really simple of your desire and move on to, like you were saying, Kristi, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's purely navigational and directional.
Yeah. Unsentimental.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the CERT program, since that is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on here. You are, as I mentioned, the director of the MVM Teacher Certification Program, which is now in its, 5th year?
Well, I mean, you could say maybe like 7th, because the first iteration of it was before we actually began the version that it's in now, the sort of robust online and in-person version. And I was in that first class of, the sort of early days. And I think we graduated in 2019. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was totally in person over a series of weekends. Am I correct? Over a period of a year?
Yes, weekends, and maybe sometimes like 4 or 5 days. I think there was a period that we did do a summer, like we capped it off in the summer with maybe 4 or 5 days or something like that. But it was in person, and people like myself, I was already in Dallas, so I was traveling, and it was sort of a mishmash of how we could all come together over the course of that year or year and a half or however long it took to do that.
Yeah. And Kyle, to give it context, those were, the idea of actually creating that certification was to create some kind of, initially some kind of, I don't know, what's the word, vouching for a group of teachers. There were 5 of you all, right?
Yes.
Kristi?
Yep.
A group of teachers in the beginning, the first couple of years, actually, a group of teachers who had been in the work for years, some over a decade, whether they were shadowing me at NYU grad acting or doing these kind of ongoing workshops, experimentation, research workshops that we were doing over the years. So it could be done in that kind of format, abbreviated format, weekends, etc. Because you all, by and large, had a vast amount of knowledge of MVM, but also a vast amount of knowledge of teaching, which, that's that is part of the central component of the CERT program, which is the art of teaching, practicing the art of teaching.
And was that the case when you conceived of the CERT program? Did you know when you were starting it out that it was going to be about the art of teaching?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Or was it just sort of about disseminating the work at that point?
I think it really was more what I had just said. It was really more to give the acknowledgement, of meaning like they could take this quote unquote certification, which is, certification is basically a glorified vouching service, right? Instead of my Uncle Tom or John or Pete or my Aunt Mary vouching for me, it's going to be this other thing that is going to vouch for me. So I think in those beginning days, it was really more about getting that possibility for those teachers. And invariably it turned into an art of teaching because of who was in the classroom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it was because
of all that expertise.
Yeah. And also it was who was in the classroom and also who you and JP and Liam are as teachers of the work. Like, because you all are such brilliant teachers and were interested in our brilliance, then, like, to your point, Scott, the art of teaching just started coming through because, like, it had to. Like, it was imperative to the way that the work was going to get communicated to our future students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when there's so much knowledge, historical knowledge in a room, it just feels like that's such a waste as a researcher, it feels like, oh my God, I have this opportunity. Let's keep investigating. Okay, how did you feel when you were, what was your experience when you were doing this as the teacher? What are your concerns? How would you teach that more efficiently? Without even like providing an answer necessarily, but really tapping into that knowledge, which continues to be part of the way we work, as opposed to, I just don't believe you can teach anybody anything fundamentally. I guess that's it. I just think ultimately you can offer knowledge and a space for experience, but I'm going to teach myself. Like, my cells are going to teach my cells, right? It's not like you're going to intravenously pump knowledge into my veins, even though sometimes it can feel that way, but it's just not accurate, to the way the brain works on some level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at that point,
so it helps to remember that, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was just going to say quickly, at that point, like, we all had, I think Scott sort of vaguely mentioned this, that like we all had been in some capacity learning the work in various ways, like had taken numerous workshops with Scott or had shadowed him at NYU or and there was a period of time before we did this even where a bunch of us were living in New York City and we had these like impromptu, like, okay, 4 weeks, once a week with Scott, we were going to go in and just like work on the exercises and work a little bit on our teaching. So we had kind of built up to this first possible, iteration.
And it sounds like it sort of discovered what it was during that iteration and obviously continues to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
I mean, COVID changed everything, right?
Right. So that brings us to cohort 2, which was my class.
Yes.
And that was begun in fall of 2020. Now, when did you put that on the books? Did you know that it was going to be a sort of online COVID period class? Or were you planning for another in-person process?
Oh yeah, I mean, we were planning for another in-person process for a good long time, frankly, because the thought of having to take, our manual now is over 400 pages. The thought of having to take all those exercises and all that knowledge and somehow put it into an online authoring tool, and even what that even means, and to take all those videos, and even to think about what is the construct? What is the best construct? What can we teach online with integrity? What can't we teach online without, what needs to go in person? That if COVID doesn't happen, I still don't know if we have this model available to us, because it took a good year and a lot of resources, and a lot of genius from other people to figure out how to do that. And once COVID happens, everything in person dries up. There's no business, obviously. So we have the blessing and the curse of taking advantage of this time, or just licking our wounds. So we, thankfully we took advantage of it. And that's, in building anything, when you think, okay, I want to build something local first that becomes, international or spreads out into the greater wide world, that seems like a logical way to build it, right? You build in your neighborhood, you see if anyone cares about what you're doing.
Right.
and then if they do, maybe it goes into other neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I think it would have taken years, maybe decades, or maybe I would have been dead and they started doing it. But I think the mission of making it accessible to every human being in the world that wants it can only happen in this kind of format,
Right.
And so that was the gift, really. It's like now it is accessible, and we've had and continue to have people from all the different parts of the world.
Yeah, there were 2 people in my class who were in Helsinki the whole time.
Yeah.
And I know we've had another student who lives in Singapore, and more
and
other
Australia,
folks from Europe and Australia. A couple of people from Australia.
Yeah.
Kristi, can you talk a bit about how the program, given this shift to to Zoom and to this platform we use called Thinkific, which is this sort of online scholarship, tool. Can you talk a bit about the structure of the cert as it stands now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Scott's point, like when we shifted because of COVID, and people were desperate for community, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all
and something to do. I mean, just speaking for myself.
Just keep me occupied, right?
Please. Right? I don't have kids. Give me something to do.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's like, we're shifting and humongous, insane shout out to Allie Everts, who's our company manager, as we're working out with her and her brilliance on like, well, okay, so what is this thing gonna be? A lot of what was happening at that point was like what I like to call like Zoom school, which is just, you just get on Zoom and you just do a class. And like, that's fine. Like just getting on Zoom and just doing a class can be amazing. But it's not, we knew that it wasn't the best conduit for like Scott was talking about the 400-page manual, right? Like we knew that it wasn't going to be sufficient for a teacher certification program, right? Mm-hmm. And so Allie was sort of, and probably you too, Scott, I certainly didn't know, Allie knew, I didn't know anything really about how to actually build an online program, like a legit online course. And so that was an education in itself. And then we had to go like, okay, well, what is this thing going to look like? And how do we break this up? And we knew that there still needed to be an in-person component. At some point, everyone was going to need to get in the room at some point. There are going to be exercises and components of the work that are just not going to translate to even learning from a video. You're going to need to be in the room with the other humans doing the thing. But we looked at every single possible thing that could be translated to both video, reading, and embodied like on Zoom, like real-time live virtual possibility. And that's how we started kind of thinking about it. But even when we first built it for your class, Kyle, we didn't even realize like how much the embodied like shared time class would be like, how valued that would be. And so we were like, okay, people will get online and they'll do their readings and they'll watch and practice alongside the videos. And then they'll create a video of themselves embodying the work, and they'll submit that and we'll review that. Well, that wasn't good. That wasn't good enough. And that maybe was okay for your class, Kyle, because you also were coming, we called you the fast track group. And we were literally rolling out the program while you all were in the program. I mean, it was madness.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Scott said it took a good year. There's no way that's true, because COVID hit in March and I was in class by September. So like,
yeah,
y'all were moving at breakneck speed.
Well, yeah. And we were creating content while so like if you were taking one class and we knew that several weeks from then we had to get the content up for the next class, we were like, running up to our bedroom and creating videos and like editing.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily Scott and Liam and JP had written a lot of material, but we were going into editing and adding to that material. But anyway, all that to say that we started to realize that like, because people were so like, A, because they were so interested in having community, and B, because there needed to be this time where, yeah, you're in a teacher cert program, but like you need to be having community with your cohort. You need to be learning from a faculty member, really being a student before you are then being asked to teach the work. And so that's kind of how eventually we evolved into the sort of like 3-tier structure that we have for each one of our courses within a given level. So that's our understand it, embody it, teach it. So understand it, going online, doing the reading, watching the videos, practicing alongside the videos, jotting down your questions. Then embody it, going to a 3-hour Zoom class with your cohort, your very small cohort. We never go above 5 people in a section so that you have a lot of one-on-one attention. And then you're getting feedback from your faculty member, and you're also sort of like simultaneously watching how they teach it in real time, which I think is really important.
Right.
Because you're then getting prepared to teach, and then receiving your assignment, the portion of that course that you're going to teach, and then coming back to your teach it class, teaching your cohort, getting feedback, having a moment to reteach a certain component. And, I have to say, like, one of the things that I've been thinking about of like, I think there are many special things about this program, but maybe one of the most special is the sheer number of attempts that our students get at teaching across the entirety of the program. And just getting used to, because it can feel so vulnerable to get feedback on your teaching, especially like if you feel that teaching is your superpower. So,
right.
So then to have somebody suddenly say, it's like, oh God. But to work that muscle of receiving that over and over and over again and sort of cracking open to that, I think is a really important aspect of this program.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like common sense, at least to me, right? That if you're certifying a teacher, you would want them to actually physically embody teaching as often as possible. And yet, yet in my very general and cursory looking around, let's say, forget voice pedagogy aside, right? In general, there's a lot of teaching programs that are lecture based, and they're giving you the information on how to teach, but not giving you a lot of opportunities to actually teach. That was the most surprising thing to me when I kind of poked around a little bit. And I guess that's why I'm thinking of this as much as teaching the art of teaching as an art form. Because there's no, you're not going to learn, especially if you have limited experience with the exercises of MVM, you're not going to learn how to teach them masterfully in a year-long certification process. So, right. So there's no expectation that that's going to happen. That's just going to happen the more you teach it and the more you make it your own, frankly, right? Through your own personal wheelhouse. And that's just going to take time and attempts. But we can certainly work on you in the room, all the time, So
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people who come, well, at least a lot of, I shouldn't say people, a lot of actors who come to teaching in higher education have gone through some sort of graduate acting program wherein they've gotten very little to hardly any feedback on their teaching and then are just expected to know how to do it. So that doesn't usually happen in any other type of scenario. It's like, here, do this thing, and now you know. I mean, obviously, like, you're practicing, so you're going to hopefully, like Scott said, get better as you're practicing. But like, to not even be able to have learned like what is effective pedagogy, is a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, it reminds me of Uta Hagen's first book was called. Was it her first book? I'm not even sure. But the first book I remember was Respect for Acting. And then she wrote Challenge for the Actor, I think, afterwards. But it was, to listen to her talk about why she wrote that book, it was about like, come on, people, this is a craft, like dancing and piano playing. And like there is, let's forget about the magic. And there are steps to this craft that you can actually practice and you need to practice to show respect for the craft. And I think about that with the art of teaching. Just because you're a subject matter expert in something or not, doesn't mean you can embody the art of teaching, right? And that is something separate from, integrated with quite often if it's done well, but separate from. Right, there are component parts where if you know those component parts about teaching, you can teach anything. Mm-hmm. Once you understand what you're teaching. But I just thought about that in relationship to that book, Respect for Acting, and actors in general, and respect for the craft of acting, and all the work that it takes to become masterful in that craft of acting.
Yeah.
That no one sees, right?
Right. So we have the online component, these live Zoom classes. We have the Thinkific platform where people are watching videos and doing readings, and they have many, a few dozen teach-its over the course of the year, I would think, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And all of that culminates in the in-person component. You mentioned that there was a couple of days in your class, Kristi. Now that in-person component is up to, is it 10 days out of 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we did 4 or 5 days back in the day, but now, yes, the current program is 12 total. It's 2 weeks, but 2 days off, so it's 12 total days of training. Yeah, and you are embodying work that you've done before on, via the online platform and via Zoom, where you're going to, get back into that work, but in person, adding the hands-on component that we talked about, then learning new exercises and work that, of course, we could not do on Zoom or on video, but we're going to do in person, and then teaching a total of 4 times. JP came up with this sort of brilliant thing, which I love, which is the first time you teach, we do this thing called the baseline bliss. And the baseline bliss is like, teach something that's not Miller voice method, that you are just in your bliss in. Like you just know you're going to have so much flow and potentially so much fun. And, so we've had people do watercolor. They teach people how to watercolor. Scott, your favorite example, of course, is Amanda teaching people how to floss their teeth properly.
Amazing. I'll never forget Gretchen's Zumba class. Gretchen's Zumba class was so much fun.
Yeah. So
you see another piece of their personality suddenly come out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Which is
Go ahead.
Which is what we're looking for.
Yes.
Right? That's what you're trying to bring into the room first. What does it feel like to teach something that, that you love, that you enjoy?
Yes.
So we get to see that part of you, and then we can sort of compare that as you move into the exercises, teaching the actual MBM stuff, and go, but where was all that where was all that flow and all that joy that you found when you were teaching us, painting or whatever it was?
Yes, exactly.
And what specific things can we do? What MBM cues can we use to get you back to that place, which of course is mirroring exactly what we're trying to do with our students, whether they're actors or communicators of other kinds.
100%, because we're so interested in each individual's unique way in and their perspective and the way that they teach, the way that they think about the world, their style, their teaching style. And we start to get, the little things start to get revealed of like, oh, you're actually quite funny, like,
right.
or oh, like you're quite a challenging teacher, like, and so we can kind of then, as you said, sort of hold a mirror up to that and kind of enhance that then in the Miller Voice exercises that they are then, those other three that they are teaching across the span of those 2 weeks. So that's a really, it's a really special time because there's nothing like, getting into the room and being able to be teaching and learning in person, but also because everybody's encountered each other through this virtual space. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wow. And of course you always get the sort of like, you're that tall,
I had no idea how tall you are. Yeah, exactly. So classic. Yeah.
But you get this you get this sort of special uniting, and the cohorts, they really bond over that time. And I just think that's really important because they always then think of themselves as this cohort who went through this really sort of special journey together. And then if they're doing continuing ed classes with us or coming to the Miller Voice gym and encountering each other or going to our certified teachers lab, whatever, it's like they have that bond that was created during that time.
Yeah, or if they get a job and suddenly have to teach, a class that they, using material that they don't feel 100% confident in because they haven't touched it in a while, like I will call my CERT comrades and be like, how do you teach this? What's the important point of focus? And then they'll be like, oh yeah, so I have my manual that I can go to, but I also have this incredible community of people who share certain values and share a certain experience. I never feel like I'm alone in this work, which is incredible.
Absolutely. There's also a certain level of duress that we can begin to incorporate throughout those 12 days, where once the person starts to get more and more in flow as they teach one lesson after the next, then we can kind of, introduce, okay, these are common, difficult questions that we receive in the classroom. These are different little conundrums that come up in this exercise or challenges that our students often have with this work. So, to Scott's point, like the best learning after that point is just doing it and doing it and doing it again with your students. But at least there's some prep into sort of like the world that you might be stepping into, basically.
Yeah. I'm hearing myself say the art of teaching, all that kind of stuff. And so what is that? And I think first and foremost, it's whatever that person's wheelhouse is when they're in the flow state. Like what gets them into that state is very individual. That's why we don't think, we don't think of it like a cookie cutter. An MVM teacher looks like that or like this, right? If anything, MVM teacher looks like a person in their wheelhouse. But a lot of people, don't know what their wheelhouse is, even if they're in their wheelhouse. Like, how would you even describe that? You may describe a feeling of being in the experience of it, but it also looks like something too from the outside. So having those conversations and getting that kind of feedback, and also knowing when you're not in your wheelhouse and what is causing that or what causes you to be in your wheelhouse, all those things, and being intentional about setting up the environment in a way, outside and internally, in a way that allows you to be in that wheelhouse, in that bliss, joy, whatever the buzzword is for it, but
flow,
flow, involved in the task at hand in a very curious and appropriately transparent way, in the sense of flow of information. So. That's why, it's that it becomes fun, because you really start to have an interesting cast of characters in your community.
See people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And
Which
it can
is
be
really
quite
nice.
challenging too, that in person, it can be emotionally and physically pretty draining. It's called the in-person intensive for a reason. And so you'll get to see people in a lot of different states over that time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's showing, I often think about teaching too, but it's an 8-hour day, and teaching is a profession where, I'm trying to think of other kinds of maybe air traffic controller. I don't know. That requires, like, if you're teaching for 3 hours, it requires like nonstop attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're leading, and it requires a certain kind of energy, and there's no rest. There's no don't pay attention moments. And that takes a tremendous amount of stamina to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the stamina I have as a teacher and the stamina that I have as a student are so vastly different.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, when I'm on my teacher adrenaline, I don't even know that an hour and a half has passed, right? I'm so out in the room, to your point, Scott, I'm so sort of out and present moment to moment. I haven't thought about getting hungry. I haven't thought about what I'm going to do later. I mean, usually, here and there, of course, those things do happen. But for the most part, like, I'm sort of just so outwardly focused on the students. And there's a level of, for me, I don't know how you all feel, but there's a level of exhaustion that comes from that, but it's after the fact. So it's like I get done and then I go, oh, shit. But but as a student, especially a student in the intensive, you are sometimes in the teacher headspace, but you are sometimes and often in the student headspace. And kind of when you're in the teacher headspace, you're in the teacher/student headspace. And so, because you're trying to learn what you need to learn.
Hats.
Right. So many hats. And so that can have a totally different taxation on the mind and the body, and we take breaks and we have those 2 days off, but it's a different level of energy required. I mean, we've learned over the years of doing this, that not only are the breaks important, the breaks during the day and also those day breaks, but also, we will say, okay, you're going to teach next. Okay, you're going to go take a break now and prep for your teaching. You're not going to be a student in this particular other person's lesson. And at least that gives that person a little bit of a brain break and a way to, sort of collect themselves. But it can be, as you said, it's an intensive.
Yeah, that's also another thing that we, think about quite a lot, which is, and again, seems very obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me until a student of mine that I'd known for a very long time. So I had a nice relationship with her. She had gone to an acting program, and she just kind of recounted how hard it was to survive sitting in those chairs, watching scenes. You're in a conservatory, so you're there for 12 to 14 hours from the time you get there to the time you leave at night. And to your point, Kristi, on that teaching adrenaline, you feel like you could go and go and go, but the students are not experiencing that.
Right.
Same kind of.
Especially if they're not working today.
Yeah. And you're like, no matter how interesting you are, now how captivating you are, and also sitting in a chair for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. So now I just encourage the students to sit wherever they want in the room, lie down, see things from different angles, be transparent about their energy levels. If I see someone almost nodding, I'll say, hey, go lie down or go get some water, or, because nothing's happening there.
Right. Exactly.
We've all been in that place where we're trying to stay awake. It's just a horrible experience, So to be cognizant of that is important.
I'm conscious of wanting to try to bring this home. It's been such a wonderful conversation. There's one thing I want to address, though, before we go, which is, what if I am a listener to this podcast and I'm curious about this certification program and I have no experience in MVM?
Yeah, I mean, generally when we have folks who apply for the program, we find out all the things about them. Do they have experience teaching, or have they had experience in voice work, or have they been a leader in a certain capacity? So we're not just looking at like just one thing. And you can come into this program without having studied Miller Voice at all. And we're proud to say we designed it in that way. Like it really trains you from the ground up. And then if you're in the program and you're feeling like, I'm getting this, but I could use a little bit more support, then, we're always looking at each individual and saying, okay, well, like maybe this person is taking this program and we're also offering these, tutorials over here, or maybe we're going to do a little bit of something with this particular applicant prior to the program to kind of have them get a little bit ready for the program. But again, the program is designed so that you do not have to have experience in the work in order to be able to fully enroll in the program, because it is so comprehensive.
And not specifically for folks from acting or theater backgrounds, right? We have 2 students right now in the certification program who are not actors at all.
Right. We've got one student who is
I think they're really enjoying it.
Absolutely. We've got one student who's a professor of writing, and she's using it with her writing students to create embodied characters and embodied scenarios in their writing. We've had speech pathologists. We've had teachers, but teachers of other types of other subject matters, right? It runs the gamut. If you are, I would just say this, like if you are a person who is really interested in how you can become more effective in your level of communication in whatever scenario you need that to be in, whether it's, running a room, running a team, or teaching it in any sort of capacity, as long as you have a passion for teaching and teaching others and yourself to be more effective in communication, then this can be a great program for you. I don't know if you want to add to that, Scott, or if I was clear with that.
Yeah, that was great. I think it's, I'm trying to think of other, because my mind works in metaphors. I'm trying to think of other, I don't know, if you're teaching car mechanics, it doesn't necessarily mean you're teaching driving, so we're using the components of MVM, breath, voice, presence, a way of navigating and perceiving things. So where can you use that in your life? I mean, you answer the question, right? And how to communicate that knowledge. It's kind of like we use the exercises on its, I don't know, how do you explain it, right? We're using because it's really the exercises that allow you to, it facilitates your ability to communicate, and then you're teaching about communication as well, right? So you're using the thing you're teaching over and over and over again, which is unlike many other things someone would necessarily teach. Right.
And I think it's important to bring up something that we haven't said, but it's so vital, is that we, Scott, you always talk about this, like we're constantly looking at the audience. And so whatever audience that you are dealing with and that your potential students would be dealing with, we're hoping to captivate our audience through the use of our instrument, our vocal instrument. And we're training that in a variety of ways. And so if you have a level of interest in that, then hopefully you have a level of interest in our certification program.
Yeah, and you want to talk about the levels a little bit? I mean, we have sneak peeks where you can come and hear more about this stuff.
Yeah.
And
I think why don't we talk a little bit about how folks can find out more about the cert program itself, and then we'll plug a couple things and we'll get out of here.
Absolutely.
What's the process? Yeah.
So you can go on millervoicemethod.com, and then you can use the drop down for teacher certification. And that's got a breakdown of, how the levels are broken out, when the next coming dates are that you could be possibly enrolling, how to apply, what the cost is, possible financing options, everything that you can think of, the curriculum, who the faculty members are, that's all in the drop down of teacher certification on millervoicemethod.com. And then if you want to come to, like Scott was talking about, one of our sneak peeks, it's basically a sneak peek into the certification. It's usually me, Scott, and our company manager, Allie. And we will at first sort of break down what the program is. Then we will give you a link where you can go away and actually watch like snippets of some of the video content from the actual online portion. So you can get a sense of like what you would even be doing at home. And then when we bring everybody back from watching that, we basically just want to get to know you, why you showed up and why you got interested in insert, et cetera. And so if on the website, there's going to be a calendar and events button on the upper right-hand corner. And you can click that and that'll tell you when the upcoming sneak peeks are. And we've got another level 1 starting in June. So if you're listening to this in April or May, and you're thinking, ooh, like that would be interesting to start over the summer, then we just always encourage you to go right ahead and apply. The application is like one little Google sheet. It's not daunting at all. And then we'll gather a reference from you, and either Scott or I will do a very informal interview with you at that point. The other thing to note is this program can be done quickly, and by quickly, I mean like if you started in the fall, you could do fall level 1, winter level 2, spring level 3, summer intensive, done. That's like the fastest you can complete the program. Yep. But you can also break the program up because we have rolling admission. So if you wanted to start with us over the summer and then take level 2 in the winter, et cetera, you can kind of go at your own pace. And that can be really nice for people who do anything from, they have a commitment coming up, or they just want to break out the finances a little. We have that flexibility as well.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about that structurally, Scott?
No, that's as if you read my mind. Amazing.
It's as if you two have been building this thing together for
years and years and years. Yeah.
Kristi, thank you so much for all of your time today. Thanks for sharing with us about this. I think it's an incredible program. It definitely has changed my life. I, as a person who have not done a ton of teaching, but I'm now I'm on the faculty of the CERT program. It's such a pleasure to engage with the material, and thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, you're a wonderful teacher. We're so happy to have you on faculty. Honestly, you're brilliant. And really it's just like such an honor to spend time with you all. And, I love you both. So it's been joyous. Thank you.
We do love to talk about the ideas in this group of people. That is certainly the case. That's so true. So fair listener, if you are interested in CERT, as Kristi said, look up MVM, millervoicemethod.com. Sorry, just millervoicemethod.com. If you want to send us a question for the podcast, it's activebreath@millervoicemethod.com. Something that you want us to talk about online, something that we've mentioned that's not clear, anything that you want to address, please do. And we have a couple of offerings coming up as well. We are still running the MVM Gym, the spring session. It's Tuesday evenings for 1 hour, 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern Time on Zoom. And then Saturday mornings from 11 to noon Eastern Time. That's an opportunity to come in. Folks of all levels, brand new beginners to experts, come in and work with a certified Miller Voice Method teacher. They will guide you through some exercises and give you some feedback. And then Scott and I will be teaching a workshop, as we have mentioned, in May 15, 16, 17 at the Atlantic Acting School in Chelsea, New York. This is specifically for actors who are interested in coming in and developing their craft, maybe moving from competent to compelling, which is something that we should talk more about at another time. More details about that also on millervoicemethod.com. Anything else you want to plug, Scott?
No, not at this time.
I guess the other thing to mention is there's also the presence training, which, as we've mentioned before, it's a great intro to the material. It's all asynchronous videos that you can watch that teaches you certain exercises, and there are sort of workout plans that you can sort of choose your own adventure on your way through MVM, and there's a free trial of that as well. So if you're curious, drop in and check out some of the presence training videos.
Oh, you know what, Kyle? If people want to get on our newsletter list, maybe they can write us at info@millervoicemethod.com or the
great.
mailbag, either one. Yep. And we will put you on our newsletter list. It comes out, I don't know, once a month. There's not like a set date as activities and opportunities emerge and news too.
Lots of ways to get in touch.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Well, we'll see you all in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening to this episode of Active Breath. Thank you, Scott, for your time as always. And thanks, Kristi, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristi. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, team. See you next time.